Hello, everybody. Welcome to the April BenQ Education live webinar. I'm your host, Cooper Harrison. Today we've got a special presenter, and I'll get to that in a second, but the title of today's session is Starting Strong, Strategies for Successful Technology Integration in Schools. So we have Elaine Stiefel. She is the Director of Instructional Technology of West Ottawa Public Schools. And I'm going to be turning over the presentation to her shortly. But one quick reminder, again, we do a giveaway at the end of every webinar, and today's giveaway is a BenQ Screen Bar Halo. So stay logged in and you may be the winner by the end of the week. You never know. One quick note before we throw it to Elaine, she's got a lot of background here. Her district just went through a successful integration I'd say just about a little over a year ago, and we could not think of a better person to present today in terms of strategy and collaboration when it comes to integrating new technology for schools. It takes a lot to get everybody on the same page, and she's going to tell us how she did it here today. Okay, Elaine, I'm going to let you take over, and it's all going to be your show.
Thank you, Cooper. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment and make sure that you all have access to the slide deck before I get started. So the bit.ly was placed in the chat by Carly, and Cooper's going to navigate today questions for me as they come up. So if you can see my slide deck here and you're able to see it through the bit.ly link, please let me know. Just put your hand up on the thing, the raised hand.
You got some thumbs up and you've got somebody who said got it in the chat, so you're good.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to get rolling then. Carly, everything looks good on your side? They can see my slide deck clearly?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you much. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. So as Cooper said, my name's Elaine Stiefel. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology in West Ottawa Public Schools. I just finished my 7th year in West Ottawa. And today I'm going to talk to you about how to start strong when you're doing a new initiative, specifically with technology. So how you can plan strategies for planning and creating successful systematic change. Okay. My bachelor's degree, I have 2 bachelors, one in English, one in history from Oakland University. Go Grizzlies. My master's degree is in instruction and curriculum from Grand Valley State University. And I also have my Ed Leadership Cert for Administration Cert. And then I am going to be graduating next week from Western with my Ed Specialist degree in Educational Leadership, and it will also provide me my central office endorsement in the state of Michigan. And I recently opened up my own consulting company called Elevated Learning Solutions. So looking at today, our objective, I want to share with you some actionable research-backed strategies to help you design and implement sustainable and systemic change in your school district, because this is really hard to do. We all try to do it, but how can we do it to be more successful? So how many, again, you can hit the raised hand here. How many have you heard this statement when you've been adopting new initiatives? This is just initiativitis, this will pass. I'm going to retire in blank years. I don't need to learn this. Oh, great. Another thing admin wants us to do. And lastly, I just don't have time for this. All right, so it looks like we have had some hands raised. At the end or in this presentation, we will find, we'll come back to these statements and we'll discuss how these strategies can help diminish these negative statements that you might hear from staff in your organization. So when we look at systemic change, I want to make sure we clearly define this. It is not a one and done or a one size fits all. It's a change in the organization when you are doing systemic change, and it's also a change in how we think and how we possibly will currently teach. When it comes to technology, a lot of times we are changing our teaching practices in the classroom. We need to address the culture before we get the change that we want to see. It should be a collective approach that will make it more successful, and it's continuously evolving. The other thing that a lot of people forget about, systemic change takes 5 to 10 years. So if this is something you're hoping to see in a year or two, it's not going to happen. So you need to be patient and you need to be able to adapt along the way. And this is reciprocal too. So it's not just you leading this change, but everybody in the organization needs to embrace it. So it's a reciprocal relationship around this. As I said, 5 to 10 years, you are going to have bumps along the road. This will not go smooth in some areas, but it's how do you pivot and adapt with those bumps that come in there so it doesn't feel like bumper cars the whole time. When we look at learning organizations, so one of the books I read during my ed specialist degree is the Superintendent's Field Book. And it has great information in here on how to lead change in an organization. And they focus on learning organizations, and they have key points within learning organizations that they've noticed. The first one is, if you're a learning organization, there is the concept of personal mastery in there. So you have a personal vision and you have aspirations for individuals to reach that. There's a shared vision in that organization. So you are creating this vision with others. It's not just your vision, but then you design an organization to achieve that vision. And then you are thinking and interacting with others around that shared vision. You also have mental models, which is really making the abstract or unclear or invisible assumptions more concrete so that they don't become, you know, I always say like telephone, like it turns into something it's not. If you don't do this, what you will see is frustration and confusion on the vision you're setting in there. You also have team learning. So your team should be learning and collaborating together. They should be having deeper conversations and sharing complex strategies in order to evolve your organization forward. And then last but not least, we need to be thinking about the systems, the big picture. So seeing the whole and how those parts come in together to support that vision you want to see happen, and how those parts are interacting together to, again, develop a deeper understanding to push your organization forward. So I work in West Ottawa Public Schools, and I know some of you may not be in the state of Michigan, so I just wanted to give a few points of our demographics in our school system. We are a public school in Holland, Michigan. We're right along the lakeshore of Lake Michigan. It's absolutely beautiful. Our motto here, our vision, is preparing our students to be college, career, and life ready. So when they graduate, we want them, regardless if they're going to college or they're starting out in an entry-level job, they have the skills and resources they need to be successful and to continue forward. We service about 6,700 students in our district. 17% of our district is English learners and migrants. We are the highest in West Michigan for that percentage. We have about 14% special education population, 56% at-risk population, and we are primarily Hispanic Latino. We actually have more Hispanic Latino students in our district than any other ethnicity. And then these are just some of our points of pride. So we are the #1 place in West Ottawa to teach. We're the #1 public school in Ottawa County in Michigan. We're the 4th most diverse school in the state of Michigan, and we have a 95% graduation rate. We do offer AP and IB courses as well. So some of the projects that Cooper brought up, one of them was the BenQ board, but the strategies I'm going to present to you today I've used in multiple projects during my time in West Ottawa. So we have what's called the WO Tech team. These are instructional technology leaders in each building. I'll talk more about this as we move into tips and tricks for sustainable and systemic approaches to change. I supported our COVID elementary teachers. We were only 1 to 4 with laptops, and we went into COVID. Everybody had to quickly get on board with remote learning, and I supported that initiative. And then coming out of COVID, I helped us open West Ottawa Virtual Academy, which at that time was a K-12 virtual program. And we use our own curriculum in that. So we took our face-to-face curriculum and modified it to be in 100% remote learning environment. And then about in 2019, we started an initiative for getting computer science into all of our buildings. And so we are one of 3 school districts in the state of Michigan that have clear K-12 pathways with computer science. And we've done that with the support of MDE along the way. And then right around that time too, our math department teachers in our secondary buildings wanted project-based learning training. So I helped find grants to provide funding for that. So all of our 6 through 12 math teachers are certified teachers, and they're doing problem and project-based learning. And then lastly, as Cooper said, the BenQ initiative. So we were looking at in 2021, we started the conversation of how do we make our learning spaces more flexible for students and foster student-centered learning practices. So at that time, we had a projector in the top of the classroom. We had a desktop, so the teacher was stuck behind the desktop when they were using their technology. And we had just moved to wireless document cameras during the pandemic, so we wanted to continue using that. So that was really one of our focuses, is how can we change our classroom for our teachers so that the environment is flexible for learning spaces and also promotes and fosters student-centered learning practices. So how did we get this? How do we now, we have all of our teachers that have adopted BenQ and they're fully embracing it. We're changing our teaching practices. How did this happen? And so I'm going to go through 5 key strategies here. There are more that is encompassed in this. So this is, again, just big picture, but just some advice on how you might be able to foster the systemic change you're looking for. So the first one is creating a plan. So I do have a background in project management, and project management 101 is creating a solid plan before you do anything else. There are 4 phases in that project management plan. It's the initiating, the planning, the executing, and then the closing when it's done. And so you will see, we'll refer back to this throughout the presentation, some of those project management components. So when we're looking at creating a project management plan, I break it down into 3 phases. So phase 1 is our planning phase. Phase 2 is your pilot phase, and phase 3 is going to be your implementation phase, where you fully adopted and you're moving forward on integrating into your entire district and organization. And so this is a whole 2-day PD around itself, but you will see that there are multiple points in here, and I'm going to pull out some of those strategies that you can do to execute each one of these phases a little bit more successfully. So the first thing when you're starting your plan, you need to define the why. So why do you want this change with technology, and how does this align to your district's strategic plan? So just because we saw the technology, we want to make sure we're not going into the glitz and glamour, but what functionality and how do you want it to change instruction in the classroom, or what do you want it to do in the classroom? So if you do not have a strategic plan, that's one place I would start with, and defining the why. And so for us, again, we wanted our classrooms to have students ingrained in the learning process, not the teacher doing direct lecture all the time. So then it goes into what does this look and sound like? So when we went into a classroom, we said we want it to look collaborative, student-centered, meaning students taking ownership of their learning. We wanted it to be image-rich so that students had clearer visuals to help support their learning. We wanted our kids to have fun, so then it's engaging in the learning process. We wanted it to be interactive and experiential. So we wanted students to have experiences that will build those other skills other than just academic. And when we talked about sound, we want students posing questions. We wanted to hear them engaging in discussions. We wanted the content to sound relevant to what's going on in the current world. We would love to have see cross-curricular, so a multidisciplinary approach. And we want our kids, again, having fun, so we should hear laughter when we're walking past these classrooms. So I'm going to give you a second to read this quote, and it's from a book called Influencer, The New Science of Leading Change. So I'm going to give you about 15 seconds, and then in the chat, if you could just type in 1 or 2 words that maybe resonated with you. All right. Do we have things coming through the chat, Cooper?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. So what's a word or 2 in here that maybe resonates with you?
Consistent and meaningful, measure and accountability, clear, consistent, and meaningful.
Yeah.
Those are the main ones.
meaningful, right? And it all stems with how are we relating this initiative? What is the benefit for our teachers and our students in here? So the meaning behind it, we need to connect the heart, right? If we don't connect the heart, you may not have as much buy-in in here. And the influencer talks about this. We need to create some sort of contextual understanding of the why and get our people to understand how it connects back to them and what their values are in the organization. So again, I would start with, we have 3 primary documents in West Ottawa we use when we start an initiative. The first one is our strategic plan, which we released in 2022, and it goes until 2027. We are currently modifying it because we have reached a couple of our goals, and there's other ones we want to place in there. The second document we have is our portrait of a graduate in West Ottawa. So when, again, we're going back to our initiatives, how is it going back to support our students with the skills we want them to have when they graduate? And then we also have what's called an instructional compass, and this guides our teachers on their instructional practices in the classroom. And so when we're bringing in technology, how is it supporting these areas on the instructional compass? And you will see at the core of that are relationships. Everything is centered around relationships in our organization with students in our community. So when we look at adaptive leaders are expected to provide direction so that the group knows where it is headed, protection so that the group can protect itself from attacks, orientation because people do not like to be confused what their roles are, conflict resolution so that the equilibrium can be maintained, and norms because people have to understand what is involved with being a member of a particular community. And I think norms is one of the things we tend to forget about and we just expect people to know, but it's really important to revisit that throughout the project process. So our second step after we create our project management plan with our visionary documents and why we want this technology and what that might be, we're going to identify our stakeholders. And this is really crucial. You should create a stakeholder diagram and you should define what those roles are for each person that's involved. This allows everyone to have a clear understanding of their involvement, what they're expected to do, and what someone else might be expected to do. In addition, it creates clear communication because now if there's a problem, say for example with the technology itself, they don't reach out to me because I'm actually just training them on the instructional tech. They'll reach out to our person in our IT department to get help on that. And so the more efficient they can be in getting the help, the less confused they'll be and the less delays there are, which means it'll be a more smoother experience for those involved in this process. So opinion leaders is the next point in here. So when you're looking at your stakeholders and you're starting with a pilot or the adoption, you should really look at who your opinion leaders are in your building. So the influencer talks about the rest of the population, over 85% of them will not adopt a new practice until the opinion leaders do. And so when you're identifying your stakeholders, think very strategically on who holds the weight in that community of stakeholders that you're targeting. And then this then will turn a me problem into a we problem. And it creates interdependence with your teams. And develops people's abilities to work as a team. Because again, the hardest thing you have is that buy-in. So if you can get those opinion leaders on board from the get-go, that's going to make it a lot easier. The influencer talks about how the easiest path is the best path to initiate change. And I think sometimes we feel like the easiest path is cutting corners. And that's not what this is advocating. They're actually saying the easiest path is getting your influencers involved, your opinion leaders, and that will create less resistance for the initiative you're trying to implement. And then after that, determine your milestones. So what are going to be the key accomplishments to target that you're on track and success? And so we created a milestone document. We made it into an infographic, and this was something we used with our teachers to communicate, here's the process and what we think it might look like. In addition, this might change because things may happen and we need to pivot and adapt. So this is a tentative plan. But it made it easy for teachers to see where we were going. It was easier for them to see like when they needed certain goals reached by certain deadline dates. And it also allowed us then to share this with the other teachers when we did our full rollout You know, if a teacher were to say like, I never even knew this was going on, you know, you can say, well, we've had this along the way. And I didn't have to say that. Our influencers, our opinion leaders were the ones to say, well, actually, we have this document. We've been working on this for a year and a half now. So it's great as a communication tool, and it's great to just have clarity when you're starting out where you want to hit specific milestones along the way and celebrate those. And then lastly, you need to determine your finances when you're planning your project, your initiative. So how are you going to fund these things? Finances that we used in our tech initiative were grants and bonds. We had Title II funds and Title IV funds for PD. We used some district FTE to pay teachers for attending things. And we also got local businesses involved as well to support the initiatives we were seeking. And then things you should also make to itemize in your budget: professional development, sub-cost, teachers' time for compensation. Remember right now, especially new teachers with the economy and the recession, how it is right now, they are working multiple jobs. So if they're not going to their job to attend PD, that means they're probably missing out on some financial security that they may have. Same with teachers that have kids at home. They have to pay sometimes to get a babysitter for their kids if they're attending PD. How do you remove that barrier of the financial barrier for them? You should also look at budgeting materials, materials for marketing and community events. When are you going to showcase the change that you're doing in the district so that your community can see where their tax dollars are going? So I'm going to stop here for a second. The first tip is the longest one, but Cooper, what questions do we have coming in? What questions might you guys have on this first step of advice?
No questions yet, but we're monitoring.
Okay. All right, I'll go on then to tip number 2. So tip number 2, I'm going to call it addressing the elephant in the room here. So how do you design systematic rollout? So the way we have done it multiple times now, we have 3 steps in the systematic rollout. The first one is we have a pilot group, which is about 5% of our teachers that are in the district. And then once we pilot and we get their feedback on it, we will do a next phase of a mini adoption rollout, which is about 25% of your teacher population, and being very strategic in how you choose that. So choosing teachers from different buildings, choosing teachers on different grade levels, choosing teachers with different content areas, years of experience. And all of those will help create a balance then in getting the word out for each of those areas to get those teachers on board. And then the last step would be the full rollout. And then you will have those supports within each building and different content areas. And that's creating a systematic approach to create those in-house supports for the change you're seeking. So tips for the pilot: you should start where it makes sense. When we did BenQ, we were doing K through 12, nobody had it. So we started with some elementary, some middle, and some high school teachers, all with different years of experience and all different content areas. When I was doing the computer science implementation, we started at elementary because we already were having some things going on in the secondary building. So look at where it makes sense with your tech initiative that you're adopting. Choose teachers that self-select. We never force a teacher to be on a pilot, and we never force a teacher to be an early adopter. That's probably the number one way you can burn your bridge with staff, is forcing someone to be on the team. If you have someone that's hesitant, like for example, in our first adoption where we had 25%, I had a 25-year veteran teacher. She's like, Elaine, why would you want me on this team? I'm slow with technology and I'm old. And my response was, that's why I want you on the team. I think that this technology is so easy to use that you will be able to adopt this, and you'll be able to pull our other teachers along that are saying the same thing and let them know how easy it is. And I just told her, I'll meet you where you're at. I'll be here every day if you need me to. If you can give this a try and trust me. And if you don't like it a month or 2 in, we can take you out of the first round of adoption. And she has been one of our strongest advocates for the BenQ implementation in our buildings with our veteran staff. And then also tips for piloting, gather community and student feedback. So student feedback is really important because that's why you're bringing the technology in, is for the students. So create some sort of survey and send that out and get the feedback again to see how it's changing the classroom. And then after you identify your team, you need to build your team. So this goes into project management 101. They have 4 phases. You're forming your team, you're norming your team, you're storming the team, meaning this is where they start having some conflicts and you're teaching them some resolution skills, and then they're going to perform after that. And one way you can do that is by using the norms of collaboration. So thinking collaborative, adaptive schools has norms. I use these in every one of my meetings. I start them out and I say, I want you to choose a norm you're going to work on today, knowing our objective is X, Y, and Z. They share it and they write it on a sticky note. And then that way the sticky note is there as a physical reminder for them. And then at the end, before we all leave, we reflect, how did you do with your norm today? What went well, and how can you improve on that in the future? They also have strategies for building team capacity and making processes more efficient. So they have things like, if you need to explore things and discover what resources might be available, they have strategies for that. If you feel like your team needs better structure on dialogue to come to a consensus on something, they have strategies for that. And so this would be a very good resource if you're like, I'm not sure how to organize this to get my team from point A to point B. Check this out because they'll have lots of things there. The other thing Silicon Valley uses is called game storming. And they talk about when you're doing innovation, there are 3 phases. Innovation just doesn't happen magically. Even with adults or children, we have to use processes and procedures to get them there. So in the first phase is the divergent phase, and this is where you're exploring what is the problem or innovation we're trying to do here. And then emergent is exploring all the resources and then starting to thematically pair them up. And then when you get to convergence, this is where you're coming up with the final idea and then moving forward with your next steps. Highly effective teams do this process, and they don't just do it on a whim. They have clear processes in place to get them through these 3 phases of innovation. So again, if you're doing PLC times meetings, these would be 2 resources that are research supported on highly effective teams, thinkingcollaborative.com and game storming. And now we're going to look at how can you change this statement then. So remember, we have these 4. When you start getting your influencers or your opinion leaders on board and they have a voice in this process, and that also includes your principals and upper level leadership. It goes from, this is just initiativitis, it will pass to your staff, say not just yourself as the leader, but your teachers and your principals saying, this is a clear and strategic plan for this implementation. We all need to be a part of this process. Instead of hearing, I'm going to retire in blank years, I don't need to learn this, someone will say, you will have how many students in the next blank years that will be impacted by this initiative. Let's not leave them behind. Instead of saying, oh, great, another thing admin wants us to do, you're going to hear your staff start saying, this aligns with our current strategic plan by ... And the last one, I don't have time for this. There will be time throughout the year to learn this, and this will also save you time in the long run. So we're flipping the negative to the positive. And again, it's not just me as the leader for this project, but my teachers who are the heart of this project are the ones stating these things, which will help advocate smoother transition to change. So with adaptive leadership, in adaptive situations, the leader cannot do the community's work. The community has to do the work. If you're working harder than your teachers and the people part of the pilot, that's a red flag to say you need to stop and pause. Why are you working harder? What can you change in this process? Because all of you should be carrying this. You are not carrying the load on your own here. All right, so what questions do we have with tip number 2?
No questions yet, but Paul did mention game theory is an awesome way to test drive new ideas. So there was a comment.
Awesome. All right, so tip number 3, we will be looking at communication. So what should you be communicating along this process? The success stories that are happening in your district should definitely be part of that communication plan. Updates to technology, That could be literally the updates with the technology or updates on that project process with the technology adoption, and then any tips and tricks that can be out there. So when we look at tips and you're sending these out, these can happen in weekly emails that you send, so your newsletters, whatever, to staff. Infographics, you can make those through Canva very easily. And that makes it more digestible and visible for teachers. We had things like, here's how you can do PBIS strategies on the BenQ board. We put 6 strategies on there, put it in an infographic, printed them out, put them in teachers' mailboxes, and they posted them up on their room as reminders. Video tutorials and strategies. We have a YouTube channel for our WOTech team, and they put the videos on there for tips and tricks, and we use that as part of our weekly update for Tech Tip of the Week. Our tech leaders, so they provide shoulder-to-shoulder support for staff, so they put hours during their planning time or before and after school. They are financially compensated that. We give them 15 hours a semester to support staff on their instructional tech questions. And then I also support them through shoulder-to-shoulder and with any other teacher in the organization. Flow charts are huge. Lucidchart is great for that. You can get a free plan with your education email. And then social media is another way for communication. For the teachers that maybe don't read the emails but are on social media, they will see those updates on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and your community will see that as well. I truly believe part of the reason why our bond passed with flying colors last November was because we were so transparent about what we were trying to do and how we were doing that in the classrooms with the technology. Cloud-based collaboration, you should be thinking of ways, again, if you have pilot teachers in different buildings, how are you able to get them in one spot to share strategies? So we would set up a Google Classroom, and they were all teachers in there so that they could just add tips and tricks or resources as they found them. And then we also would share, we also would share in our weekly email updates of quick, easy strategies on what to do. So this is a minute strategy from Kim Hulse. She's a 2nd grader, and she's showing one way that students are taking ownership of setting goals. So I'm just going to show you this, and we sent this out to staff.
Made this chart for iReady. The goal is that kids will hit at least 10 minutes per day, and that's hitting our 45-minute or more goal by the end of the week. So I created each of my kids a little circle, so they have their photo on the inside and then their name, and then they're able to check their iReady minutes as they work, and they can come up and move their face. So today, as we're filming this, it's Tuesday morning before school. Most of the kids hit their 10 minutes yesterday, and then they can see that they should be in this last box by Friday.
And how has that impacted student motivation?
Yeah, they're super motivated because they want to be able to come up and move their face along here. And then it's cool because by the end of the week, we want to see that everybody is in this box. And then I can check in with any kids who are not in that box and try to figure out why it is, whether they've been absent or if it's just that they're not getting logged in quickly enough or whatever it might be. I can figure out if kids are still over here by the end of the week, how we can push them to get them into this last box.
So again, if we're not creating transparency on these strategies, that's a very easy student-centered strategy, right? The kids are saying, this is my goal, and here's where I'm tracking my goal. Kim, as the teacher, is able to visually see it and then provide remediation for any kids that might be behind, trying to figure out why they are, and then support them better than what she was able to do once she finds out what their needs are. And so my teachers, we have 8 elementaries. So we have 8 elementaries with 2nd graders. How do you bring down those walls physically from each other so that other teachers can see what teachers are doing with this? And these quick little 1-minute tips and tricks are great ways to do that for our staff. All right, questions on number 3?
No, go ahead.
Nothing in the chat on this section, Elaine.
All right.
Cindy said she loved the idea. So just a reminder for everybody on the call, if you have any questions, don't forget to throw them in the Q&A or in the chat. We did have a question from Paul just a second ago that came in. Are time-saving technologies like AI and automation helpful with prototyping or testing workshops, strategies, etc., or if human ownership of the process is essential?
I think AI is going to be a game changer for that. I know for me, I used it to create a couple of my infographics, and it saved me probably 2 hours of work time designing it. So I think that on an administration level, AI is going to be huge to help you do your part. I think that on a teacher level, this is going to be helpful for them as well, because one of the things in education is sometimes we're stuck on just like, what are some ideas? What can I initially start with here? And so with AI, being able to put a prompt in and say, what are 3 project-based learning ideas on ecosystems? That's going to pop it out right away, and the teacher's not stuck. They have somewhere to start generating things and move forward. And even on like our BenQ boards, again, we have 17% of our students are EL migrant. They have a translation feature in here. So instead of the teacher having to go back and look up the word, they can literally circle the word and translate it right on the board, and that student now has that in their language if they need it. And so what our teachers are seeing is that some of the AI factors built within BenQ or the technology is allowing students, again, to take ownership. Khan Academy is one we're using in math classes, and we're seeing kids come back and say, I feel like I can learn math now at my pace and not rushed. We have kids that are excelling. We have kids that are doing better than they've ever done before, saying, I actually am a math student now, and I feel confident in that. That's what we want for our kids, are to feel confident and that they can achieve anything they put their mind to it. I do think there's a gray area with AI where it needs to be a part of the process and not the product at the end goal. And we're going to be very intentional with our teachers. AI is the next initiative this fall, and we're doing training this summer on it. So for tip number 4, we're looking at how do you foster collaboration. Again, this can be cloud-based, face-to-face, and through professional development. So cloud-based, we use Google Drive, and we also use Google Classroom, but you should have an LMS for online collaboration that teachers can share things for, or be doing it through Drive. And this also works for your project management log. I didn't show you guys this. We use a Google Doc, and you're able to tag people in there and provide updates on there. For in-person meetings, we tried to make this fun. So we called it the BenQ Petting Zoo. WOTAC team members did this. They had fun snacks that were related, like animal crackers and fruit snacks that were animals, for people to come in and learn and just play around with it to make it less intimidating. The number one reason why people do not want change is because of the fear of the change. They'd rather stick with what they know and not let go of that and go towards what they don't understand or don't know. And so the BenQ Petting Zoo really was instrumental for us in making sure that our teachers felt like it was a low stakes, just get to know each other, get to see the product and touch it without it feeling like it might explode on them. And then we also schedule PD throughout the year. So we have shoulder to shoulder with WOTAC team members or myself. We have our half-day PD calendar where it's structured in. We have things planned for that. And we also have summer PD for teachers to have more opportunities to learn it when students are not, and they're not in the heart of the school year. Any questions on PD? Okay.
No.
Last one, and this is the biggest one in my opinion, besides planning your thing, it's being adaptive. You need to adapt along the way, and you cannot adapt along the way unless you are collecting data both quantitatively and qualitatively. You need to be responding to that data you're getting back and supporting people, and then rinse and repeat. This should be happening on a bi-weekly, monthly, whatever you feel like is appropriate throughout this process. What I had noticed when you start doing a pilot, there's a lot more check-ins. And then as you do the first phase of adoption with your first 25%, you have a lot up front. But then in phase 3, you are just getting more questions. But because you've built the capacity within each building, for example, in our first adoption, we had 13 teachers adopt in each secondary building and 3 teachers in every elementary building. We are building the systems of support right within that building so that hopefully if a teacher has a question, they know who they can go to. By the way, we did a lucid chart and created a stakeholder diagram. Here are all your teachers in your building and in these other buildings that have been a part of this process. So if you have questions, you know immediately who you can go to. And then that allows more escalated issues to come up to administration. So we're getting like, hey, everyone's having an issue with their BenQ board just turning off. Okay, let's find out why this glitch is there and get to the bottom of it. So it really helps create those systems and support so that you can now do your job, which is provide systems and support, but it's a bigger piece as an administrator, is I call it removing barriers and providing the resources they need to feel and be successful. So adaptive work, the biggest leadership challenges revolve around adaptive problems. Most people are reluctant to change and want every problem treated as a technical issue that can be solved quickly by those in authority. Sometimes they're not technical issues. To obtain the permission you need on the adaptive side, you have to be successful with the technical work first. So get the technical done first, and then you'll be able to do the adaptive part along the way. And the influencer talks about this as well. You need to collect data and adapt. You need to know what the needs of the group are. You need to remove barriers for them, provide the resources that they need so that they can overcome those barriers. I call it a temperature gauge. Where is my group at? Are they feeling good, warm, and fuzzy? Are we getting like really good success stories? If so, grab those and start highlighting them. If there's frustration, what is that? What is the magnitude of that frustration? Because again, then I need to go back and I need to advocate for whatever that is, that element that is causing it. And last but not least, and this goes into culture as well, but just re-emphasizing a growth mindset. So you will have problems along the way, and how you interact with your stakeholders can provide a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. So if someone comes to me with a problem, I can be like, oh, great, not again, because that's a fixed mindset. And be like, oh, it sounds like we have a hiccup. How are we going to work past this? Let's problem solve. I'll get a hold of so-and-so, and then I follow up. The fact that how we react to those hiccups when they occur is setting the tone for how your staff will end up approaching those same hiccups or in the future when they occur. So just be very cognizant and aware of what you're modeling. And then to just finalize this, there are some principles of change that come out of the superintendent's field book, and I think that a lot of these have resonated with me, so I just wanted to share them. Change is a process and it's not an event. So if you're thinking of just, we're going to be here and it's done, that's not how change works. You are, especially with systemic change, this is a long process and you should be doing cycles of this to keep it going. Developing and implementing an innovation are very different things. So when you're developing innovation, that process looks different than implementing innovation. And so that's where it goes back to those strategies with adaptive leadership and with the game changers, rule breakers. There are strategies when you're trying to differentiate between these two, and that will allow your team to be more successful. An organization does not change until the individuals within it do. I think that's clear. That's all about that's about being a change agent. If we don't get the hearts of our people to understand why they're doing it, they're not going to change their behaviors either. So we need to start with that motivation and the influence, and then find our influencers in each building to help then start making that happen. Innovations come in different sizes. So we have had smaller things like just our secondary teachers doing PBL, and also bigger projects like all of our classrooms being changed to be flexible learning spaces. They all go through the same project management cycle. Interventions are the actions events that are key to the success of the change process. I see this happen a lot in education, where a teacher will come up and then they'll tell something to an administrator, and the administrator's like, okay, I'll take care of it. 2 months go by and it was never addressed. What that tells the teacher is that, well, you'll tell me you'll take care of it, but nothing ever happens, and therefore they don't come to you with any issues in the future, which then the administrator's like, why didn't they talk to me about this? If someone comes to you about this, you need to take it seriously and say, I may not have the answer right now, or I don't have the answer yet, but I will find out for you and I will follow up, and then follow up with them. That creates a culture of trust, and it creates a culture that you care about what their concerns are, and that you're going to make sure that their concerns are addressed. Then they'll start coming to you with other things. Top down and bottom up are fine, but the horizontal leadership is the best. So I call it collective leadership. We're all doing this together, and we all have different roles, but that doesn't put my role above your role. We are working together, and we have different roles for a reason. and that allows this implementation to go smoother. Administrator leadership is essential to long-term and successful change. This is so true. It has to start from the top. I know I just said top-down doesn't work, but superintendent has to be a part of these conversations. They need to be physically present at these trainings. They need to send out messages in their weekly updates that support the initiative that's going on, so that people know from all the way to the teacher to the superintendent, we're all on the same board here for this initiative. Mandates can work, but they don't work very well. You will always have compliant teachers, and they want to make sure they get the A+ in school. But that doesn't mean that people in the organization are doing this with fidelity. So again, how do you tap into the heartstrings and pull on that to get them bought in, because that will give more fidelity into this process. And the school is the primary unit for change. Facilitating change is a team effort. Appropriate interventions reduce the challenges of change, and the context of the school influences the process of the change. So all of these, again, are key components for change. With that, I'm going to stop and ask what questions might you have. Again, I know this isn't a full take home, but these are key things along your project management process, along creating your plan that you should be implementing to help initiate systemic change in your organization.
We're looking at the chat now. Elaine, I'll ask you a question. You covered this whole process, and this is a big project, right? What was of the entire integration, what was the biggest challenge in overcoming this fear of change that you were talking about earlier?
Honestly, the biggest challenge was the laptops. So
Really?
We had a lot of misconceptions. I thought teachers would be thrilled with the laptops and removing the desktop. But we had some teachers saying, how am I going to do this when my laptop's not plugged in? It will just shut everything down. How is it actually going to mirror to a board? It can't possibly do that. And then once we started doing these BenQ petting zoos and showing them that, it really diminished some of that concern. And we also created an infographic that said FAQs on your laptop that you're going to receive, and we sent that out into every mailbox. We did a physical printed copy in the mailboxes, and that helped answer a lot of those questions too.
Awesome.
And then when we had some confusion too, I'm like, hey, WOTEC team, can you guys kind of dismantle some of these misconceptions that we're seeing in there? And so they were having conversations and then pushing those into grade levels so that it was a more consistent, uniform message that clarified some concerns.
Awesome. Any other questions? Anybody? There's one.
We have one from Paul in the chat again. What are the key ways you recommend to stimulate or kickstart change readiness in a learning organization, especially to those that are most resistant?
Yeah, I would say start with a pilot team. Find out what the changes. At first, I would do a survey with your district. Find out what is the change that they're seeking or feeling that is needed within the organization. I firmly believe sending that out and getting the feedback, you will see that people are probably already in alignment with you, whether we realize it or not. And then bring in some of your early adopters and those key influencers. So into the first round of the pilot, people who will not get stressed out when that change is happening and they run into a hiccup, they'll just be able to roll with it. People who are understanding strongly why that change needs to happen, because they will be your biggest advocate. So get those people first into a pilot. Do a pilot for about 6 months, which sounds like a lot, but you have to go slow and start building that foundation to keep that momentum going. And then that way, when you get into your first adoption with about 20 to 25% of your staff, those pilot people will be able to say, hey, I think these teachers would be good too. And again, we sent out a Google survey, who wants to be the first round of adopters for this? We had them sign up. And then we worked with principals to say, who do you want representing your building in this? And who do you think would be a good leader within your building to advocate for this change? And we went from there.
I think I would just like to add, we had Trisha on the chat that said good reminders on how to affect good change in your school. And Paul, thank you so much for fielding some questions. I want to just give my 2 cents on it as well. As I came up and hung out with you guys for a couple of days last year as you were beginning to roll out the majority of your boards after your pilot group. And your pilot teachers, the ones I got to interact with and that I've dealt with on multiple occasions since then, they're amazing. They really are your cheerleaders on your campus. And so finding people who are as passionate about what you're trying to do within the district, I think is the reason why you guys have been so successful. And besides all the pre-planning you guys did, don't let me take away from that. But I truly do feel that that was the biggest part of it. We've for those on the webinar, we've had some of the teachers from West Ottawa with Elaine's team join us in multiple different events. They came with us to FETC this year. They're our first round of brand ambassadors for our company. And honestly, they hung out in our booth and talked to people and helped educate people in a very different way. And so I know that that's a really big part of it. They love the capabilities that they're given with this product. And so that's what's really important, is finding people who are not just okay with getting along to get along, that are really looking to challenge and find new ways to do things. And some of the instances we've had with Elaine's district are different ways I would have never thought of using our products before now. And it's just amazing what teachers can find when they're given the freedom to kind of figure it out themselves. So I just want to say thank you, Elaine. You're wonderful.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Carly. So the other piece I would say on culture, I really emphasize with my pilot teachers and first adopters and with my WOTEC team, our culture is failing forward. And that's our motto. So I want you to try something, and it's okay if it doesn't go well. We've all had days in the classroom where you thought a lesson was going to be this and it turned out to just blow up, right? The key is, one, I'm glad you tried something. And two, what did we learn from that? And how can we change going forward to make it more successful? And that takes time to nurture that with your team, because a lot of times teachers are like, am I going to be negatively evaluated on my evaluation if I'm a part of this pilot and things aren't going well? I'm like, no, you're not. Like, if anything, your evaluation is positive because you're trying something for the district. Like, you're not going to be evaluated negatively for trying something. So getting rid of that fear of failure. We also talk and say a lot, we're going to meet you where you're at. I don't care where your skill ability level is. My job is to not judge you on that. My job is to support you, to help you grow and nudge you along to be feeling successful with the resources we're providing you. And so I'll even say, like, especially with WOTEC team members, because it's my job to help to nudge them to grow. And I'll say, like, this might make you uncomfortable, and this is why I'm saying this. And so I'm encouraging you to try this. And if you would like me here, I can be here for that. But really pushing them outside of their comfort zone and let them know it's okay to be uncomfortable, because that's where we grow. An athlete doesn't get good just by doing the same exercise routine every day. They are constantly challenging themselves. And we are in a profession that needs to grow. Businesses are doing things differently. They've had to, or they're not going to survive. As an organization and an institution, we need to start doing things differently to better prepare our kids for the world that's out there.
Awesome.
I would agree. Elaine, thank you so much for your time today, for all of this great information. Everyone on the call, Elaine has done this training, this workshop, as we'll call it, a couple of times so far this year. It's normally a 2-hour workshop with a lot of hands-on stuff. She's crammed it down into 35 or 40 minutes for us with time for question and answer. Thank you, Elaine, for all that you did to get ready for this. Thank you for putting the thought and effort into it. Thank you for everybody for joining us today. You want to wrap us up?
Yes, I'm going to put a nice bow on it. Here we go. Again, just like Carly said, thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Elaine, for your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. We will see you next month, and be on the lookout. You may be the winner of our Screen Bar Halo. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.